if you could take your seats so we can start live streaming. There are people who are waiting for us online. لازم تجي. Okay, welcome everyone. Today is a very, very special and unique day for us. We are here as the first event after the fall of the regime for the Syrian women political movement. We have done events for the past 7 years, and we are in a very new historical trajectory today. So thank you for all of you for being here, for coming to listen to what we have to say as Syrian citizens. And I want to start by also thanking all of our co-sponsors, specifically, I want to thank the people who have personally worked with us, all the experts at the working level, all of the women and men who are working behind the scenes to make these events happen and for us to come together. There's so much work and effort that goes into this. And I want to thank especially our hosts and co-sponsors, the UN Women. And I want to thank the rest of our co-sponsors, including Belgium, Canada, Denmark, the European Union, France, Germany, Ireland, Luxembourg, Norway, Spain, and the United Kingdom. Welcome, all of you. The format of the session will be so that we will start with our amazing line of speakers here. They will give us their bit, and then we will move on to get remarks from our amazing co-sponsors. And a couple of notes on housekeeping is that this event is being live streamed, and there is a translation to Arabic that's happening online. You could see it here. You can sign on, and if anybody wants to listen to the Arabic translation, you could use your headphones and sign in to the event to listen to the translation. However, in the room here, it's going to be all in English. So this is our event that is about transition in Syria, envisioning Syria's future. We want to share with you the Syrian women political movement stand on what's happening with all of the fast developing situation on the ground after the historical fall of a regime that ruled the country for over 50 years. I want to start with without taking too much time, with introducing the amazing panel, not in a traditional way. Some of the people, I don't know if everybody has gotten their bios, but you could see their bios, printed out in front of you. But today, what I want to talk about is that the grit, the perseverance, and the persistence that these 3 women have had throughout the last 14 years, and before that, resisting the Assad regime. I want to start with Muzna here next to me, Muzna Duried, I met when she was in her early 20s. And the first thing I remember her talking about a program she was working on that is called Lajiat La Sabaya. And this was an organization that she had started and she was leading to stop child marriages in camps because there's so much refugees coming out of Syria and people fleeing that she took on her hand that she's going to start something that is very different and unique as a young woman to support other young women to not to be put into child marriages and early marriages. Muzna Duried came as a refugee to Canada, and she has grown and has done amazing work on the ground with the white helmets throughout her career. And now she is leading with Noble Women Initiative on working in the whole MENA region. She has the grit and the perseverance and the persistence that we need in feminists to create change in the world today. And then comes Wejdan Nassif. I need to tell you about Wejdan Nassif in a little bit different way. Wejdan Nassif was imprisoned by the Assad regime for 4.5 years. She was in prison in 91, and the way she wanted to resist this regime was by creating a play inside prison. And the way they did it is that they decided, and I didn't know this, and this morning we were talking about it. She decided they need to do a play, The Lady from the Sea, for Ibsen, which is a Norwegian poet. They decided they're going to write the story and play it in secrecy against all of the guards and against the director of the prison to do this play so that they can have the other women see what resistance looks like. How when you have the choice and freedom, you make the right choices. And they were caught by the director of the prison, and he destroyed all of the, and they put away all of the preparations they had done. They had a cloth that was blue, for the sea, and they collected egg cartons to create the rock shape where they're going to take the play from. And then it turns out that one of the women who was working there, who was in prison for a crime, not because she was a political prisoner, who decided she's going to support. And all of the other women in the prison started hitting on the pots and pans that they had to object to what the prison director had decided that they cannot do this play. However, the guards in the prison, and this is what I want to emphasize on, is that the guards in the prison decided to hide them and help them do the play. This is in 91. There were everywhere in Syria people who are actually resisting at different levels in different ways. And Wejdan today is the General Secretariat of the Syrian Women Political Movement and an active feminist at all levels globally and locally. Grit, perseverance, and persistence. And then Sana Mustafa, our amazing Sana Mustafa, who was also in her early 20s when the revolution started, and she was detained. Her father was detained, and she was back in Syria 3 days after the fall of the regime looking for her dad. She has not found her dad yet. Sana Mustafa came to the US as a refugee, and she was couch surfing at the beginning when she came. Sana Mustafa studied, built herself. She worked while she's studying, and then she became the CEO of one of the biggest refugee organization, Access Asylum, that was handling over $15 million of funds to help refugees, and worked tirelessly on the idea, not about us, without us as refugees speaking for refugees. Without more talking, I'm going to open with Wejdan Nassif to give us her bit about Syrian transition.
Thank you, Mariam. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here with us. A few months ago, talk of a political transition in Syria seemed like a distant dream. For 14 long years, we Syrians had suffered under a seemingly deadlocked regime, and many of us were hopeless of seeing the Assad family removed from power. However, the historic event of December 8, 2024 marked a fundamental change: the collapse of the Assad regime, which had ruled and oppressed Syria for more than half a century. It was not simply the removal of a family from power. It represented the dismantling of a repressive regime that had committed systematic atrocities, violated human rights, and suppressed our political freedom. This critical moment opened the door to rebuilding Syria, a Syria free of oppression, where every citizen has a voice in shaping its future. The responsibility for building this new Syria falls not only on the new and the emerging government, but on every Syrian man and woman. As members of a political feminist movement, we envision the inclusive political transition. Inclusive may sound simple, but it carries profound meaning. and requires multiple mechanism to be implemented effectively. Syria's ethnic, religious, sectarian, and regional diversity, coupled with decades of marginalization of many groups, especially women. This poses significant challenges. Under the former regime, women were relegated to advisory roles without their authority and capabilities being recognized. Accordingly, we in the Syrian women's political movement are open to collaborating with the new government, providing all the support and capacities we have. We have already tried to open communication with the related parties and are hoping to hear from them very soon. Today, as we enter a new era, these omissions must be corrected. The new government has repeatedly declared its commitment to inclusivity and emphasized the importance of competence in appointing women to positions in power. However, these competency standards must applied equally for both men and women. Equal opportunity is not just about placing women in positions. It also includes equally recognizing their contributions and ensuring their real influence in the governance process. Furthermore, the new government has not taken into consideration the importance of involving the role of the Syrian political parties, represented by diverse Syrians based on trans-geographical factors, and the civil society actors who have built their capacities for the past 14 years. To truly support a Syrian-led political process, we must first ensure that all communities are represented, not just in symbolic ways, but in effective roles that influence decision-making processes, particularly women's representation and participation. In addition, to ensure the freedom of political parties' formation and participation in public life. Second, to integrate women's perspectives into all aspects of governance and reconstructions efforts to ensure that policies are fair and meet the needs of all Syrians. Third, to establish accountability mechanism where the government's commitment to inclusiveness is regularly assessed and reported to the public to ensure transparency. Finally, an inclusive political transition is not just a goal, but a necessity for a stable and prosperous Syria. We call on all stakeholders, both local and international, to support this vision, ensuring that Syria's future is shaping by the diverse voices of its people, truly reflecting the richness of our society. Furthermore, I must emphasize the urgent need to work on social cohesion among our divided communities. The former regime left a legacy of division steeped in anger, fear, and grief. Healing these deep scars is essential, not only to repair our social fabric, but also to prevent the continuation of a cycle of violence. We do not want the victims of the past to perpetuate injustice to get their rights. During my recent visit to Sweden, my hometown, I engaged with diverse groups, young and old, women and men. We held numerous sessions focused on transitional justice and discussed ways to heal and rebuild our communities. These discussions revealed a stark reality. Our communities are living in isolation, an isolation reinforced by the policies of the former regime. Many Syrians are unaware of the hardships and experiences of neighboring communities. It's time to build real bridges to facilitate the exchange of experiences and chart a collective path forward by fostering trust and mutual understanding and ensuring that women and marginalized groups not only have the right but also the responsibility to actively participate in decision making, we can guarantee a transition that upholds justice and equality for all. Recognizing women's leadership as both a right and duty will strengthen social cohesion, which will serve as the cornerstone upon which a stable and inclusive Syria is built. Let us all commit to ensuring that justice, equality, and participation remain at the heart of this transition. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Wejdan. Touched on a lot of issues that are very crucial for the Syrians to have a meaningful transition now. And I believe one of the very important things is about the healing. It's about the scars. It's about the divisions that exist today in Syria. And I welcome Sana to talk about what has happened in the past couple of weeks in the coast of Syria and how this could be equated with accountability, truth finding, and justice. Please, Sana.
Thank you all for being here, and thank you, Mariam, for the humbling introductions. I think everyone needs a Mariam in their life. Yeah, I mean, it's really a dream, but also like a difficult time to speak about Syria today after I know many of you have been involved in Syria and supporting us for the last 14 years. Myself went back to Syria right after the Assad regime was toppled, and for many reasons. Of course, first and foremost, as a refugee, to have the chance to return to my own home country. But really, the most important reason was for us as a family to look for my forcibly disappeared father. And Mariam took the suspense away and told you I didn't find him. But yes, unfortunately, we have not found him yet. However, my journey in Syria, I was there for 2 months. Really, at the beginning, it was a dream. And I think I will always hold in my heart the first month being there. And I think many Syrians, we share the same experience. And I got on the phone with all my friends when I got there, including my family, who also is displaced. And I said, come immediately, because I think we're going to live right now a very historical moment that we will not experience again. And it seems like 3 months into it, this was true. We really experienced a level of happiness and freedom and liberation that I never experienced anywhere, including the US, and to experience that in Syria, to experience the happiness in the streets, to experience the freedom of speech, the ability to move around freely, to not be afraid of who you're talking to and who you're looking at, was really something to live for. And at the same time, it's worth and important to mention that with every single moment of happiness, there was lots of sorrow and really sadness for those who sacrificed a lot for us to be here, and those who really should be at the first row celebrating this moment and are not here because they are forcibly disappeared or killed. So that being said, really this moment or this mixed feelings, and it's important to talk here about feelings because really accountability and feelings are very intertwined, and they are really the foundation for civic peace in Syria and transitional justice. And this constant feeling that all Syrians have, because there isn't a single Syrian family household that has not sacrificed for Syria, I think will continue to be the reality going forward of this complex feelings of the celebration and the happiness of the toppling of the Assad regime and the concern and the fear of the future and the present. And during my months in Syria, of course, the 2 months, especially at the beginning, there was a lot of experiences around really the dealing with the accountability file, and especially the forcibly disappeared. And, you know, during that time, the main thought was that maybe this is going to change. And the general sense in Syria and for the public was that we need to give this interim new government time, and we have to be patient regardless of, you know, our sorrow, because they really inherited a burnt country. They inherited a lot of issues. And as my colleagues were saying yesterday, I think the worst and the hardest job to have right now is to be the president of Syria. And despite all our pain and grievances, Syrian public in the first 2 months, we're really trying to give this chance because we want this to succeed. Yet at the same time, unfortunately, I think the new government had been following the strategy that we've been observing of kind of learning by doing, which is fair and it's fine because they don't have the experience and the capacity. But they have been testing the water, and we've seen positive signals and negative signals about who is this government and who they could be in the future. And there has, like, the strategy has been a lot of like, there's no official channels, but we would hear that they, you know, change something in the curriculums, change something in the constitution, or there is a planning for a national conference, dialogue conference, and then the Syrian people will, you know, protest and will speak against that, maybe against the process, maybe against the thing itself, and then they come back, the interim government, and they amend and they say, oh, like, oops, sorry, like that wasn't it, this is it. And so this actually continues to be, which is not really helpful in building trust. But I think most importantly, as we think about and reflect about the coastal events and the massacre that happened in the coastal areas in the last few weeks, we cannot see this in a vacuum. And we have to be fair that, of course, 54 years of the Assad regime, really a foundation for why this happened, but also the last 2 months, 3 months in Syria, and the way, unfortunately, the interim government and the new government has been dealing with things is also, to be fair, one of the contributing reasons. And that being said, the main foundation would be like there are two major events happen in Syria that were extremely exclusive, regardless of the attempts for them maybe to be inclusive or the symbolic attempts. And the first one is the National Dialogue Conference that was held, as many of you know, in February. Actually, initially, when we were in Syria in early December, it was announced like first week of January that there's going to be a national dialogue conference, like the first big conference in Syria by Syrians for Syrians. And everyone, again, this is one of their like examples on those, and the strategy protested and was like, you can't just have a conference like 2 weeks after like deliberation. Is there a preparatory committee? How people will be invited, etc. So they responded well, and they said, okay, well, we're gonna hold on to that, and we're gonna think about it and get back to you. And then they got back to us and they said, well, here's a preparatory committee that's formed of 5 men and 2 women. And actually one of the women is with us in the Syrian Women Political Movement. And this preparatory committee will prepare for this National Dialogue Conference. This preparatory committee, I'm operating within very difficult circumstances, to be fair. In 2 weeks, they held thousands of conversations across Syria. And then 2 weeks later, suddenly we have the National Dialogue Conference with invitations being sent out 24 hours before the conference. And people were only invited in their individual representation, not in their political presentation or civic or society groups or communities, which really undermines the outcome of that conference. And so that moment, the conference, really, the way it happened, the process matters. And then the conference itself, despite, I think it's a big moment for Syrians to gather under one ceiling, right? And all of the positive things that we can see about it, still, I think after so many years, it was really frustrating for many Syrians how exclusive the process and the conversation and kind of how predetermined the outcome was. And then after the conference, the second big moment was the announcement of a committee of 7 legal experts that's working on drafting the constitution, also includes 2 women. And that also, in the same day, almost leaked a draft of the new constitution. So how meaningful this committee is and was, it's really unclear. The transparency around the selection of the committee and then the constitution itself that was released is another issue. And so all of these issues, I think these are 2 major things. And of course, Syria is divided and not prioritizing the security of the country and the unity of the country. This all led into the coastal events. And right now, moving forward, I have 1 minute. Right now, just to say about the coastal event, I think what's very important right now is for the interim government, if it wants to build trust with Syrian people, is to hold its people first accountable for the crimes they committed against people in the coast in Syria. And there's a lot of talks about like different groups, and yes, it wasn't only the security forces and personnel of the new government, but they did. And as long as I think we see, not in words, because this government has been really good in words, we want to see more actions around holding them accountable and the process of accountability across the spectrum of who committed crimes. I think we are sitting on a volcano in Syria and things will erupt again.
Thank you so much, Sana. There are a lot of issues that you touched upon, and it's very important that we remember that transitional justice is and accountability is a big part of when we want to go to the future to be included. But I want to go a little bit further in talking about the situation on the ground now in Syria. And Muzna Duried, please, can you tell us a little bit, considering all of the multi-layered sanctions that have put on Syria economically, especially the sectorial sanctions, and we know that there's been some easing of some sanctions, specifically recently from Canada and earlier also from the EU. What is the situation now on the ground, and what does this mean for people in Syria?
Yeah, thank you so much, Mariam. And I'm so happy seeing like Syria at the table for the first time. So we should still like celebrate the fall of the regime, because it's like it was like celebrated across Syria, across Suwana region, across the world. So this is like a very historic momentum, and we need to seize this opportunity. And we all know that like when Assad was toppled, it wasn't like the regime hasn't been like dismantled. Like Assad like escaped to Russia, while the remnants of the regime escaped to the coastal side. So we can imagine like which scenarios we have in Syria to dismantle this regime, and that we all knew that it's like a bloody confrontation will happen anytime. Because of the violence that have been accumulated during the 60 years of like Assad family ruling, and what happened during also specifically the revolution in the past 14 years. Yet Syria still like offer this opportunity, and we need to benefit from this opportunity and build on for the future of the region itself and for Syria. And we need to celebrate also the success that we have in Syria. It's like the deal between Damascus and the Kurdish forces. It's like it offers also more stability, and we will have less like a bloody escalations between Syrians. And also the promising participation of Syrian government with OPCW in The Hague last week to disposal like the chemical weapons in Syria. Also the solidarity stories from Syrians on the ground, despite that all people are suffering from like violations, from like a poor situation and the lack of services. And also like the threats on Syria. So Syria also, the Syrian government declared that Syria will not pose any threat on its neighbors, while its neighbors keep bombing Syria and keep intervening in Syria's sovereignty and also in Syrians' domestic politics. So there is no threat like now. So the threat, it's like an action. The threat is hesitation from the international community, from the Western governments as well. The vacuum that we have now in diplomatic engagement and supporting the Syrian government and Syrian people will be exploited by Iran and Russia for sure. So like and like if we will have like a Syria as a failed state, the consequences will be like not only in Syria but also on the whole region, and we will see also more like blood and violence. The hesitation and also it's like the time is very sensitive, like it's raced against the clock, and we will witness more collapse, like economic collapse and more violence. And business as usual, the failure that we saw in Iraq with the sanctions and in Venezuela, in Cuba, in Yemen, in Libya, just like it's enough, we have like enough lesson learned how to deal with like a transitional period in such countries. And sanctions will fuel instability and will lead for more violence, because sanctions, it's collective and colonial by the end of the day. We all know this, and it's a very lazy way to deal with conflict countries. And it was imposed because of Assad's behaviors, and now this reason is gone. So there is no reason to keep them. And like, if you wanted to have like more guarantees and more leverage on Syria, there's a lot of diplomatic and other like leverages that could be used to ensure this, but not sanctions. Like sanctions also, it's like if we are like talking about women's participation, so we need to remember that sanctions, by the end of the day, those who are paying the price of sanctions, they are women on the ground. It's like there is no health system, there is nothing, there is no basic needs for them, and they are like the breadwinners of their families. It's like, as like all of them that lost like their husbands. So how they can like survive this if there's like sanctions? And also, like, even for us, just like for those who are like outside, for refugees, like how on earth we can involve in Syria restructuring, and also like advising the government, being part of those like big events that we will have in Syria when there's like sanctions. We've been displaced, we build like a new life from scratch or from zero in Western countries. And now we wanted to serve our country. We wanted to be like advising like at different like fronts, but we can't do so because of the sanctions. It's like we can't risk like our life again and lose everything because of the sanctions. So if we wanted to have women at the table, we need to think like more about like the sanctions that we have. And like also all the attempts that happened, actually, it's just like lip service, let's be honest, because like as long as there is like no direct engagement with the central bank, as long as there's like sectorial sanctions, as long as the UN sanctions are in place, so we will have no change on the ground. People are still like asking, what does it mean? It's like the last announcement from the EU or from like other countries. However, we have like good also measures that have been taken by Canada as of like the new announcement that announced like last week about like assigning the ambassador of Lebanon to Syria, also easing the sanctions on the central bank and on Syria, and also allowing Canadians to send transactions to Syria, appointing also Canada's special envoy to Syria, who is like also originally from Syria, so he understands the situation and how to be connected with the with people on the ground. So all of this should be followed by other countries to ensure that there's like meaningful solution and meaningful lifting of the sanctions. Also, just like to be honest, it just like I'm coming from an area in south of Damascus where it was wiped out. Just like I went to my neighborhood, I tried to identify where is my home, and it was like impossible. We found like some of like the destroyed and in among the rebels, just like mirable of our kitchen, and we thought maybe this is the location of our home. So how refugees will return to Syria, how IDPs will come back to their homes while like cities are wiped out. So if we want our refugees to come back, if we want like the IDPs to come back to their cities, so we need to allow reconstruction to be happened, and this is the only way to do so. It's just like to lift the sanctions. We don't need to repeat Iraq's model or like Cuba or Venezuela. This is like, it's like we know what's the recipe, but please take it and do it. It's so easy. And finally, we need like a reform in the defense and security system and like sector as well. And this is like, we have like a good examples in the region, like Jordan, they have like women in police, in army, and this could be applicable in Syria, by the way. But to do so, it's like we need to have like more like political engagement and diplomatic engagement with Syria, and allowing women also to do so without having any consequences from the sanctions and other restrictions on Syria. And also, we need to repatriate the foreign fighters, just like, and the majority of them, they are like Westerns. It's like we have like a whole camp, and now we have the deal between Damascus and Kurdish forces. So what's the future of these former fighters in a Roche camp? We need you to repatriate your citizens because they are a threat to the stabilization of Syria. So this is not only on Syrian when we are talking about stability, about like also disarmament of foreign fighters, but it's your job to repatriate your citizens and to offer them like a legal persecution in your countries. So we need your help. We need you to do your job and to help us, like specifically like women, to be involved and to play this key role. It's not only like we need like these words to be matched with actions, not only giving us like, yeah, you need to do so and you need to do so, because it's very complicated.
Thank you. Thank you, Muzna. That was addressing a lot of internal, regional, and global issues that need to be addressed about Syria in a very comprehensive way. I'm going to open the floor now to have remarks from our co-sponsors. I will come back to you also if you have like further comments that you want to add from what you hear on the floor. I would like to welcome Dr. Muzna Duried, who is the UN Regional Director for the Arab States from the UN Women, to give us his remarks.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon. On behalf of UN Women, we really welcome your participation in this discussion here at UN Women headquarters, and are honored to host this discussion. As UN Women, we are also honored to have partnered with Syrian women leaders and activists in Syrian civil society organizations over more than a decade. Throughout most of this decade, UN Women was prevented from working within Syria by the former regime. And we are now very keen on returning to Syria to work from Damascus and on continuing this partnership. Of course, we all recognize the profound challenges facing Syria after years of conflict and with continuing displacement and economic distress. But we also recognize the opportunity and that we are at an inflection point. As UN Women, our main message today is to underscore the central importance of including women, of women's leadership and participation in charting the future of Syria. Also in transitional justice, and then in a gender-responsive recovery and reconstruction. I was in Damascus with the Chief of Staff of UN Women and other colleagues early this year. Before we arrived, we heard through the grapevine that a message to us that if we are visiting to pontificate, then better not arrive. We did not pontificate, but we emphasized the central importance and utility and instrumentality of women's participation and full inclusivity, real, actual, genuine inclusivity in charting Syria's future. And this was repeated today by our speakers, and we will continue to support giving space and voice to Syrian women in that direction. Also, the visit confirmed the scope and depth of the challenges, but at the same time, the unwavering commitment of Syrian women activists, of Syrian women political leaders, human rights defenders, and community leaders, who have remained steadfast in efforts for further women's rights representation. And this cannot be overstated. UN Women, we have been supporting, thanks to funding from several of the co-sponsors were represented today, the participation of Syrian women in past attempts towards the political and peace-building processes since 2016. And this included support to the Syria Women Advisory Board. It met about a couple of months ago in Geneva. Our executive director participated. And among the priorities highlighted by the 30 women member of that advisory board are the priority of societal peace, avoiding famine, and exiting the current state of economic duress through the removal of sanctions, as well as the priority of transitional justice. We have also been working with other women organizations, and today, at this pivotal moment in Syria's transition, we look to opening an office in Damascus. The government officials we met requested UN Women support with respect to supporting a consultative process involving women. That's the message we heard, as well as supporting institutional capacity and support in terms of transitional justice. And we look to the international community to support Syria in meeting commitments made by the transitional authorities with respect to women's inclusivity. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Maz, for all of the work that the UN Women has been doing, and we're very excited that you're going to be opening an office in Damascus. This is a new step for what's happening in Syria. I think it's the first time that officially an office is going to open in Damascus for UN Women. So thank you for that. I call upon PR Ambassador Robert Rye from Canada, please to give remarks. We're very happy to have you with us here today.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be here. I have to say that since coming to New York in 2020, I've had the opportunity to have many meetings with members of the Syrian community, particularly with members of the women's movement from Syria, from the various groups that have been meeting, and this is, for me, is a wonderful opportunity to express my warm congratulations to the change that has been started, but also to say that, like all change, it brings with it incredible uncertainty about what actually will come next. But I think it's important for me to stress that it's thanks to Syrian women around the world, but particularly in Syria, that they have ensured that our awareness of what is going on a daily basis over the last 14 years, that awareness has been powerfully brought home to us, and I think it's a tribute to the world that we're in today, where in the UN, we can meet with people from around the world virtually and in person. We can talk about what's actually happening on the ground on a constant basis. And we can see these movements for democracy and for freedom, for openness, and for a return of a new national pride based on those principles. We can see it happen in real time. And so this is for me, a very warm and meaningful event. But I think we also live in a world where we have to keep our eyes wide open. and we need to be aware of the risks as well as the drama of the change. But the government in Canada has made some decisions that I think are a reflection of our awareness that we need to move. And I can tell you that the former Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, and I had many conversations about the meaning of the change in government in Syria and what Canada could and should do. Mr. Trudeau appointed Omar Al-Habra, who's a member of the Syrian community and also a member of Parliament and a Canadian citizen, to help us to better understand what's going on and how we can reach out. Mr. Al-Habra made a special visit. He was appointed special envoy, made a visit to the region and had several meetings, which then allowed Mr. Trudeau to announce the easing of sanctions on financial institutions through special permits, including the central bank, which we hope will enable more support to begin flowing into the country, including from a very active diaspora in Canada. We also announced $84 million in new funding for humanitarian support, working with our trusted partners in order to address the immediate needs on the ground. And we all recognize the needs are tremendous. There's a terrible temptation in the global community to say, crisis over. Now let's turn our attention somewhere else. And you say, no, you have to stick with your attention. You have to keep focusing on what's actually happening on the ground. And let me say to the Syrian ambassador that he and I have had a number of conversations in the last few weeks, which I think will lead to more formal engagements with the new government and both ways. And we look forward to continuing that process. But I think it's very important for us to listen today and on other days to women and know what's going on and find out how we can be helpful and find out what the challenges are, particularly during this week of CSW. I think it's very important that we learn from everybody because it is a challenge. I want to just say a word about, I know that there are many Syrian Canadian women who are here, or Canadian Syrian women who are here, and just want to say, no matter what happens, you're Canadian. And we we want you to feel at home wherever you are and wherever you feel safe. And we certainly want you to know that we have really benefited enormously as a country from the arrival of so many people from Syria to Canada. And we understand the lure and the drive to want to return. But one of the things that happens in today's world is that you can have more than one home. You don't have to give up your Syrian identity to become a Canadian, and I hope you will take your values back. That's very important. And
Thank you.
So we look forward to that. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Ambassador. Very well said. It's the multi-layered identities that we have, especially at this time and age that we are living, where we need to feel that you are, even if you are from dual citizen or triple citizen, that you are home in all of those spaces. That adds richness to every culture. Thank you so much. Ambassador from Her Excellency Ambassador Christina Marcos Lassen from Denmark. Please, the floor is yours.
Shukran كتير يا Mariam. Thank you so much, and thank you to UN Women and Syrian Women Political Movement for bringing us together here today. I think, Mariam, you know that I was ambassador in Syria for Denmark when the revolution broke out, and having seen, I mean, one of the things that really stuck with me in all these years was really what an important role Syrian women played during the revolution, especially the first years, I would say, as activists, as helpers in the community committees, as planners and strategizers, and just being out there. And that's, of course, also one of the reasons why it's so important that you continue to be, you're a bit marginalized the last few years, I feel, but it's really so crucial that you need to be part of whatever is going to happen now. So having been there at the time, I mean, I almost cannot believe that I sit here now 14 years later and see you all up there and see that flag. it's really quite moving. It's quite extraordinary, and it's really because some of us almost gave up that it was ever going to happen. But as you were saying, Mariam, I mean, I think your grit, perseverance, and persistence really is what brought everyone here, and it's just very, very important you can continue to be part of this whole transition now, because it is a huge opportunity, and I think there should still be hope, like Sana talked about. So just a couple of words or points from my side, and the first one is about the whole question of inclusivity, and of course we all talk about it. It's crucial. Everybody who knows Syria knows why it's so crucial. It's of course about all the different sectarian factors and religions and ethnic groups and all of that. But I think here today we should really just focus on the inclusion of women, as I said before. So I think this is something the international community will continue to be very, very aware of. Is that inclusion also happening? As you were saying, Sana, some of the processes we've seen until now have not seemed completely inclusive. And again, there are lots of reasons and things go fast, but we just need to really, must be taken very seriously now. And I was proud, actually, last week as President of Security Council this month, that we were able to, for the first time in many years, to adopt a joint statement, a presidential statement, where we said a lot of these things. It was spurred by the very, very sad attacks and incidents on the coast, but it also, we also said another few things in there, including the whole issue about inclusive transitional process. And that, of course, we also mean women here. And you do have a strong tradition, of course, in Syria, even before the revolution, for Syrian being very engaged. And in that sense, Syrian women's political movement, I think you played a clear role, and we're proud to support the movement. So with all of that, just to say we are watching it. We saw the constitutional declaration coming out last week. There obviously has been much criticized. There were also some good things inside, including on women's rights. But now, of course, we really need to see women included in the real constitutional drafting. And we also are watching women, obviously, I'm assuming, being appointed to some of the posts in this new government. That's inshallah. All right. So this our inclusion. The second point is on, does that mean something, actually, that I'm supposed to stop talking? Okay. All right.
No.
I was not sure before. It came pretty much every time somebody spoke. Okay. Just on just you were talking about healing, I think, and the whole justice and reconciliation. I think that's another point, at least from Denmark's side, we're going to be watching a lot. We have, of course, been working on it over the years with all the different mechanisms and trying to ensure that, of course, we will have justice and reconciliation as a cornerstone in any credible political transition. Thousands of people, of course, are missing loved ones. We heard about your personal experience, and really, I'm very sad to hear about that. But we know that there's so many in your situation, and now again, also with the newest attacks and what happened in Tartus and Latakia and all of that. Basically, we need to have accountability very, very quickly, and that was also in the Security Council statement from the other day. So we'll continue supporting, of course, the WIMP and the IIIM and all these other soup of letters. But the important thing is the UN is there and is ready to support on all of that. And then maybe before this bell rings again, just to say also one word on reconstruction. And I've very much heard what you said, Muzna. Obviously, it is. As Bob was also saying, there's a lot of competition about attention of conflicts right now, which is very, very sad. It's a very difficult time. Funding is being cut everywhere. The Syria conference in Brussels the other day, it gave a good result, but not as good as we've seen previously. I was proud that my own country was one of the largest donors there. And we will continue to do so, because there is, of course, before we even can talk about reconstruction, there's all the other things that you were mentioning, and the early recovery and supporting women's households and all of that. But I think we're all very aware of that, and including on the sanctions, and I'm sure Hedda would say much more about that. We already did move from the European Union side, but there are, of course, still some concerns, because we need to see what's happening, as you all can understand. So just to say, you have our full support. I'm personally so excited, but my country, we are very much supporting whatever is happening now, and we really just hope that these hopes can continue to thrive in the coming weeks and months. So thank you so much for being here with us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador, always for your support. And also, thank you for having a member of the Syrian political movement come to brief the council next week. Yeah, Wejdan Nassif is coming also to brief council. Yes, and thank you for your support always for the Syrian women, and specifically Syrian women political movement. Now, I call on PR, His Excellency, Ambassador from Ireland, Fergal Mathan. If I'm pronouncing it correctly, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mariam. And just firstly, thank you to the Syrian women's political movement. You know, you struggled to advocate and to shine a light on Syria in the darkest of times, and this is a really important moment of hope. And it is an inflection point. I'm reminded, I don't always do poetry, but Seamus Heaney spoke about a wind that blows open the heart, that blows the heart wide open. And this is a moment where I'm very conscious too that I was at a CSW event 2 years ago when Sudanese women were so full of hope and now are not here, they're not at the table. So it's a window that we have to keep wide open now, and we have to do everything we can. Yes, through looking at sanctions, looking at support, political support, financial support, to keep this moment open and not let it close back in again. I think, and we need to be urgent, not complacent, not, as Bob said, we turn away now, problem solved, we look at some other crisis. We really need to keep the focus on and seize this moment and support you so much in ensuring a political transition that's inclusive, yes, of ethnicity and all the regional groups in Syria, but women too. And that's a transition that's based on the strongest possible human rights, women's rights, and the highest possible standards. It's not going to be easy. I think we know all that. And I think you've set out some of the challenges so eloquently. Even up to now, some of the processes have not been inclusive and have not been ideal. I think we need to keep on working there and supporting you to keep that open. I think we hear what you're saying about sanctions. I think it's a very challenging message. We see what Canada has done. Maybe we're maybe going at a slower pace in other parts of the world, and I know Head and my colleague will speak to that. But I think we really also need to listen to you and what you're saying, and to bring that message back to our capitals as well. But it is an important moment. Recovery is huge. I think it's a really difficult moment in terms of international funding. We all know it. We know it here at the UN, but also across the globe. The donor landscape is shifting in a very, very negative way. And yet this is a moment when we can't stand aside, when we can't fail the Syrian people at this moment of extreme hope and extreme urgency. So with that, I think your message has to ring loud and clear here this week and in our capitals as well. So with that, I don't want to hog the mic. I want to give the floor to other colleagues, but know that you have the full support of Ireland, our ambassador. We didn't engage with the Assad regime, but our ambassador accredited to Syria is what was in Damascus recently and reporting back to our capital to ensure that we're bringing those perspectives into our own policy making, but also policy making at the European Union level and the UN level, and full support, and keep on going. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Indeed, we need to keep the focus and the urgency, and Syria is a window of hope. We're hoping that this may be a sample, a model, maybe for what might happen in other spaces in the region and the rest of the world. And then it's my pleasure to also call to the floor Her Excellency Heda Samson, the Deputy Head of the EU delegation to the UN. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mariam. Thank you, dear colleagues. And like others, I have a previous, history here and a previous experience with Syria when I was in another capacity as a political coordinator for the Dutch mission here. And basically during that time, for 2013 till 2019, the Syrian file was the most pressing file, including when we were on the Security Council. So it's really moving to be here now and to witness the change in your country and to see you speak here. And I remember our work with the White Helmets a lot, including with you, Mariam. And so really, I'm very happy to be here now representing the European Union. And I'm happy to now also speak on behalf of the European Union. And thank you all for your very insightful contributions and powerful personal stories as well. And I think it's thanks to your unwavering dedication that we are here now and that your country is where it is now, I think at the threshold of hopefully a very prosperous future. The fall of the Assad regime, as we know, marks a historic moment, and it is an opportunity for the Syrian people. All Syrians in the country and in the diaspora should have an opportunity to participate in Syria's transition and to help stabilize and rebuild your country. We welcome the agreement reached between the transitional authorities and the Syrian Democratic Forces. the appointment of a constitutional committee and the elaboration of a provisional constitution are also encouraging developments. The national dialogue should be instrumental to ensure that the transition delivers on the aspirations of all the components of Syrian society. And I'd like to highlight the participation of women, because the participation of women in the current process of reconciliation and rebuilding your country is essential for creating a path, a sustainable path towards peace, security, justice, and development in Syria. The European Union is gravely alarmed by the widespread violence that we saw in Syria's coastal region, which has caused a high number of victims, including many civilians. We strongly condemn the attacks by pro-Assad militias against security forces and the horrific crimes committed against civilians, many of which have been allegedly perpetrated by armed groups supporting the security forces of the transitional authorities. So in this critical period, the European Union stands with the Syrian people and is ready to step up its engagement to support an inclusive transition and help address humanitarian needs and help efforts towards economic recovery. And for this purpose, the EU has suspended sanctions in the areas of energy, transport, and reconstruction, as well as the associated financial and banking transactions. And to further facilitate humanitarian aid delivery, the EU has also decided to make the existing time-limited humanitarian exemption a permanent one. The EU has remained steadfast in its commitment to support Syrian people, including through the organization, and it was just mentioned, of the annual Brussels conference over the past 8 years. And the last occurrence was the 9th one, took place last Monday. And at that 9th Brussels conference, the donor community pledged a total amount of 5.8 billion euro for Syria and its neighbors. And this figure includes the 2.5 billion pledged by the EU for 2025 and 2026 to aid Syria's transition process and the country's socio-economic recovery, while also addressing the urgent humanitarian needs, both within Syria, but also in the host communities across Jordan, Lebanon, Iraq, and Turkey. The EU will spare no efforts to support and to continue to support Syria towards a peaceful and inclusive transition away from foreign interference, which guarantees the rights of all Syrians without any distinction of any kind. And I, again, thank you for organizing this meeting, for bringing us together, and in particular for all your efforts to bring Syria and the international community to where we are now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Excellency. And it's very important, the points that you made about humanitarian continuation of humanitarian aid, and also the work that is being done to support even the refugee communities that need to come back, and reconstruction, all of that stuff. Thank you for all of that effort. I call upon His Excellency, Mr. Darmadikari, the DPR from France. The floor is for yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I will begin just to say, of course, what you've been saying and what Eda was saying is very important. So it's an endeavor, but we are still working. So all EU member states with the EU to go on with you. And just to begin with, of course, there are two words that came to my mind. It's pride and respect. Pride, I think that's what I suppose you're feeling, so what was expressed by Christina, sitting with his flag, and we are very proud also to be with you, and we can just imagine how difficult it was also for all the women you're representing, but all the Syrian that you're representing also at the same stage, also to have endured really what you have lived during the past 14 years, and respect, of course, respect is from our side, and we'll be standing here. And another word, it's also, I'm so sorry to have been late today, but I hope we won't be late supporting, of course, what's going on in Syria right now, and with a couple of messages that you sent, and we'll just take some of them. The first one is, of course, what we have to do with the transition. altogether. I mean, the political transition, it's huge. It's very large. Heda mentioned some of them, and we've been working on many issues. You know, also in Paris, we had this meeting mid-February that we tried to work on different strands with the new Syrian authorities on the question of course, the political field, which is already a path that is so broad that we have to pay attention to many aspects. The question of security, but also the question of governance, inclusivity, on the different types of inclusivity. Also, the part of what you're mentioning, so civil society in Syria, currently in Syria, but outside Syria also at the same time. The rights of men, women, the fight against terrorism, chemical weapons, and the future of Syria altogether, meaning humanitarian aid, development, and everything at this stage. And I will also come back to what Christina was saying. Of course, there is a huge part for that at the UN. We expect a lot from the UN as a whole. UN Women, but UN is a key player, but UN Security Council, and it's not over. I mean, it's really the beginning. And of course, supporting what Christina has been saying. So, I mean, she's chairing the UN Security Council this month. And I mean, the meeting we'll have next week is very important. We have to go on. And it's a common endeavor that we have at the UN Security Council, General Assembly, and other gremium. I'm coming also, we have the COSOC, but we have something to do here in New York. This is for sure. I won't be long. Just two issues I wanted, of course, to flag. Heda mentioned it. We have to pay attention to, and you made it very clear, how the inclusion is going on, but how violence can be a tricky issue, and we have to address it, be clear in doing it. We'll be listening here in New York to the different messages that we'll be sending on how you perceive about the consequences it has on the ground, also in the different regions in Syria, and we can react quite swiftly. We would be keen on reacting more swiftly, but we'll be paying attention to that also in New York. But we'll be at your disposition really to hear the suffering of the Syrian people, but how we can address it also and pay attention to the possible emergence back of the violence that we knew in the past. And the last, of course, the last point from my side is back again on how the civil society is able to construct also in Syria itself. It's not so easy, and we don't know. I mean, from abroad, and you will be one of the voices to help us really to understand what's going on in Syria. So we'll be there, and we go on. Last message. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And it's really appreciated that you will continue the conversation and listening to the Syrians. I think it is the best way forward to listen to more Syrian voices to know how to do policy internationally. I think it's very crucial. And thank you for that. And now I call to speak DPR from Germany, His Excellency Thomas Zensein. Zeneisen. Okay, please, please, the floor is yours.
So apology about the complicated name. First of all, thank you very much. The problem, if you have 10 co-sponsors, you have usually 10 countries that do agree on why they're here. So a lot what has been said, I can 100% subscribe to, and I would not like to repeat it. But I want to make it personal because I just Googled in the beginning, we have now 1.4 million co-citizens with Syrian roots in Germany. Oh. Half of them are Germans by now, very much like what Bob said. I mean, they are both, and they're a huge asset to us. And for me personally, in 2015, my family became half Syrian by integrating a family from Yarmouk. And I know your faces for a long time, and Berlin is very much a Syrian town nowadays, and for the better. And throughout these years, this was very much what you said, Anna. It is hope and despair. It is not giving up on on how to settle in Germany, but also the hope how to get back. But I always felt that in the Syrian community, those who were really the backbone of arriving and keeping up the resistance and not giving up were the women, always, in every family, and also with the Syrian opposition. And throughout my professional life, I spent 10 years meeting them at various places, not in, but around Syria. And I think there were always those who said, don't give up. It's a distant dream, but it's possible. The resistance will succeed, and we need a better Syria, and it will happen. And now it happens. And what you said, Sana, is really what reminds me a bit of our reunification, which is compared to Syria's problem, zero. But this was with a lot of East Germans, this mixture of happiness and the feeling of loss, loss of having lost years of isolation, loss of imprisonment of families. So I think now is really the time that we collectively don't miss the moment on our side, that we're really supportive. And Mr. Duried, you said it very clearly, please, it's not a moment for pontification. We have to go and listen and follow. But I think the way forward is through women. I mean, that has been proven in the past. And so whatever we can do is really trying to get women in there, because we know reconciliation, justice, reconciliation, it cannot work without the full inclusion of women in all phases of the process and decision making. So my minister, she's going to Damascus tomorrow. You may have heard she may also be the candidate for the next PGA from our side. So you will see more of her soon if she's elected. And but it's her fermentation to listen, and solidarity, of course, yes, but I think we really need your advice and guidance to get this right, because it's a challenge, like everybody else said, but our full solidarity.
Thank you. Thank you for the solidarity and for hosting so many Syrians. 1.4, I was thinking 1 million, but 1.4, that's like 50% almost more. It's very important to always point out how we are connected. We are interconnected in our struggles also. I will call now on our DPR from Luxembourg, Ms. Anne Françoise Dostert. Do you pronounce the T? Dostert. Okay.
Thank you so much, Mariam. Thank you so much for the organization of this event, and thanks to all the amazing panelists and to everything you do. And I hope this event is just the first of many. As Thomas said, much has been said. So let me just very quickly focus on the issue of missing persons, an issue on which Luxembourg together with Belgium and another co-group worked on. But we didn't work on this alone. We worked on this with the Syrian families. It's a process that has been led by the families, for the families. Of course, much has changed since the institution was created, because now there is full access, of course, in the country, but also, like, I think with the new reality and all the prisoners that have been released, a lot of hope is gone. So I can't even imagine, the painful reality, because before at least there was still hope. So I'm really, really sorry, Sana, and everything that's going on in Syria, but we still think, so many families still do not know where their missing loved ones are, and there's still a lot of work to be done. And I think the IIMP created by the families and for the families can really play a crucial role in that regard. And we hope to see full cooperation by the authorities and all the actors. And I also want to underline, that the IIMP has been designed to become a hybrid or even a national entity. And I know there's still a lot of lacking trust in the UN in Syria, and I fully understand that. But the IIMP really has the victim and survivors' participation in their DNA. So we really hope it can play a role in the reconciliation, and also it's there to stay for the long term, because this issue is so huge, it will not be resolved in the next years. And I think, it needs to be there until every family knows what happened to their family members. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Anne. And the importance of double IMP, very important that this is a long process. Thank you so much. I call on to Mr. Christopher Cardon from Belgium now to give us remarks.
Thank you very much, Mariam. We're of course very proud to be able to co-sponsor this event today. I think I will echo the words of praise that have been made or shared by the excellencies and the colleagues. I think you've shown great resilience, resolve, and determination in your actions and pursuing your objectives. This was illustrated by this press conference you organized, I think, a few days after the fall of the Assad regime. And I guess where there's a will, there's a way. So to me, as a diplomat, I think you embody this possibility of change and hope. And I think as diplomats, sometimes we need these examples because they really drive us. So a lot has been said already, maybe focusing on a few UN-specific elements or ways that some of the principles you're carrying are already being supported more widely here by the Security Council with the key principles of 2254 that have been reiterated by the Council. Also, a series of elements in the Pact of the Future, and the role of women there. So on human rights and fundamental freedoms for all women and girls, and the removal of barriers, be they economic or others, and allowing these women to have access to leadership positions, the eradication of all forms of violence and harassment against women and girls. They're as well glad to see that the caretaker authorities have made a commitment to protect all Syrians, I guess including women, and the role as well in women in sustainable development, which is really a prerequisite and so something that makes economic sense. And then finally, fully supporting our Luxembourg colleagues on IIMP, which is, of course, a humanitarian initiative. And from some of the conversations we've had, maybe as an institution, it's not known well enough in Syria. So maybe there's a role for you as well, and the different civil society organizations to disseminate information about the institution with this issue that has also been linked to economic issues and access to property, to some legal documents and so forth. And probably, I mean, it's been touched upon, it's very complex, but the new constitution offers this opportunity to push some of these inclusiveness and the elements that were mentioned. So again, there's only one sustainable way forward, is to have women in leadership, the mothers, sisters, and wives. So full support, yes, by me in Belgium on these initiatives. And thank you again for conveying us here.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. I call on Anne Venn, also a political coordinator from the Mission of Norway, a co-sponsor, to give us her remarks.
Thank you also from Norway, Mariam, for arranging this, and we are very happy to be here as co-sponsor of this very timely and critical, important event. So our foreign minister, he is very welcoming of the interim government's expressed desire to have a Syrian-led and Syrian-owned transitional process that we now hope to see in action, follow action by the words. The role of the international community should be to provide support without dictating any outcome. My second point is what Muzna talked about here today, that we need to give the interim government a chance. So by lifting sanctions and provide technical support. And the last and third point, I think what Sana talked about, that of course the violence, the rising of violence on the coast is very alarming. And the accountability will be the first real sign that the old rules have changed in Syria. So we welcome the rapid formation of the investigative committee, which must be transparent and independent. Norway stands ready to support in the means which we can. We have our support to humanitarian needs in Syria will be around 35 million euros this year. And yeah, as you know, our minister and deputy minister has already made visits and tried to stand ready to do what we can. And So thank you for the very important work that you are doing, and we hope to see you and civil society included in all the chapters of the transition that is moving forward. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. All chapters moving forward. I now give the floor to our representative from Spain, Ms. Mar Angaron, to give us her remarks.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's an honor to be here, and I would like to echo the messages that all the sponsors conveyed. We think that this is an opportunity to pay tribute to you and to all the courageous Syrian women that have worked tirelessly for a democratic and inclusive Syria and who are leading the change in the country. Thank you so much for all your efforts. We think that there is now an opportunity to stabilize Syria and to make it in such a way that all Syrians feel that they are part of the nation. And this has to include human rights and women's rights. And this is a message that was conveyed by my foreign minister when he traveled to Damascus in January and met with the interim authorities. We also believe that Syrian people deserve our support to rebuild the country and to rebuild the trust in the institutions and in the state. And therefore, Spain has pushed for the gradual suspension of European sanctions, and we have also allocated 10 million euros, mostly for humanitarian aid, but also for Syrian refugees in other countries in the region. We also believe that there cannot be justice and peace without accountability. This is a central element of the transition process. The recent violence in the coastal areas has to be investigated, and the perpetrators have to be held accountable. And we are fully committed to accountability and reparations because these are fundamental elements to the transitional justice process. In this view, Spain supports all these efforts, and we have allocated €500,000 to support UN accountability instruments, as the foreign minister announced in the Syrian conference on 17th of March. And finally, we would like to echo the message that we advocate for the full participation of Syrian women in the political transition, in accountability efforts, and in economic development, especially in this year that marks the 25th anniversary of the Women, Peace and Security Agenda. We must ensure the effective participation in all decision-making processes for women in all contexts, and Syria is no exception. So we will continue supporting you to ensure that Syrian women have a full and meaningful role in the future of hope and opportunity that Syria deserves. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Syria is no exception in the need for women participation. Everywhere we need women in decision-making places. Thank you, Ms. Mar. And the last, our co-sponsors, the United Kingdom, but not the least, please, Jack Gibbon, if you can give us the UK remarks.
Thank you very much, Mariam, for gathering us here today and for our long-running work on huge amounts of files to do with Syria. And it's great to be speaking in a slightly more positive context like we are today. We welcome the commitments by Interim President al-Shara to forming an inclusive transitional government followed by free and fair elections. We also welcome the agreement announced last week that was referenced earlier between the Syrian Democratic Forces and the interim authorities, as well as the authorities' commitment to destroying the chemical weapons stockpile still in Syria. These moves and their implementation are all part of securing a better future for Syria that we all want to see, but there is still more work to be done. We know that the challenge of rebuilding is immense and complex, as over 16 million are in need of humanitarian assistance and the economy is devastated. While the UK will spend up to 207 million this year in humanitarian assistance for Syria, we have also relaxed sanctions as they look to rebuild. General licenses have been issued to support humanitarian activity, and we have revoked the asset freezes of 24 entities and institutions in the energy, transport, and finance sector, including the Central Bank of Syria. While we are relaxing some of our economic sanctions on Syria, those imposed on the Assad regime to hold them accountable remain in place. Accountability and protection of human rights are critical parts of sustainable transition and must be part of the transitional process. National reconciliation and a process to address serious human rights violations under Assad will take time. But for this to have a chance of success, a clear pathway must be set out soon, and vigilante acts of retribution must be stopped. The violence we saw earlier this month, especially the killing of civilians, was horrific and deeply concerning. We look to the interim authorities to ensure that it never happens again and to hold those responsible fully to account. More needs to be done to bring all Syria's different communities into a consultative and inclusive process. Finally, support to women and girls is at the heart of the UK's policy and programming in Syria, including through active engagement with women's rights activists, women-led organisations, and women involved in the political process. UK support through INGOs, Syrian civil society organisations, and the UN promotes women's empowerment and political participation, boosts economic independence through livelihood programmes, provides sexual and reproductive health services, and ensures equal access to education and vocational training. Our programming directly supports grassroots organisations working on gender-sensitive and victim-centred approaches to transitional justice. UK support to the UN Population Fund, the UNFPA, has helped reach more than 3.4 million people, providing antenatal and postnatal care, family planning, infection treatment, vaccinations, and post-rape treatment. After over a decade of conflict, this is a critical moment for Syria. We are committed to working with the interim authorities and international partners to support a Syrian-led, Syrian-owned political transition process leading to an inclusive, non-sectarian, and representative government. Thank you.
Thank you. Syrian-led, Syrian-owned transition, and that brings me to acknowledge and welcome Ambassador Qusay Dahak from Syria to be here with us in the room. I believe first time in any event that we have planned at the UN in the last 14 years for him to actually sit with us, and we'd love to hear if you have any remarks.
Good afternoon, dear colleagues, everyone. Thank you, dear Mariam. I'm honored, I'm glad to be here today, attending this event organized by the foundation, listening to prominent, amazing Syrian women, telling us about their stories, about their bravery, and about their efforts to protect and defend Syria, defending the interests of Syrian women and all Syrians, not only women. I'm honored to be here. I thank UN Women for hosting us. I thank the embassies, dear colleagues who co-sponsored the event. Syria was supposed to be one of the co-sponsors. We did our best to join the list of co-sponsors. I sent to Damascus, but our people are traveling from a country to another, receiving a lot of delegations. So unfortunately, we did not get the instruction on time. But I'll be very frank, we are very proud to be here today. A few months ago, we were not allowed to meet. We were not allowed to attend meetings or events organized by, at that time, the so-called opposition. And we even sometimes we didn't know each other. But since the December 9, we started reaching out to our Syrian community, to our Syrian activists and civil society, working here in the United States, in other countries also. And we started receiving and hosting them at Syria House. And yesterday evening, we had a very nice talk, and we enjoyed it, me and the team, and it was wonderful. And we are looking for more and more and more cooperation. I was appointed PR last year, 1 month before the CSW, and I wasn't satisfied with Syria representation at that time during that session of CSW, especially taking into consideration that Syria in 1948, our former colleague, the advisor diplomat Alice Qandaleft, was elected as rapporteur of the CSW for the first time. 1 year after the establishment of CSW. It was established in 1946, started, I believe, in 1947. In 1948, Syria was the rapporteur. Our Alice, a brilliant diplomat, Alice Qandaleft, was the rapporteur of the committee. So I wasn't satisfied last year with our, with Syria represented only by the mission and by our ladies diplomats, but we wanted more. And this year, I'm happy. I'm attending many activities, many meetings organized by Syrian activists, Syrian women activists, and civil society. So it's an honor for me, and I'm looking for more and more and more. Syria is passing in a very important and very sensitive period, and we are trying to establish and build a better future for Syria, for all Syrians, by all Syrians. And we certainly need the support, the international support. The international support means lifting the sanctions, because we know that the only victims affected and impacted by the sanctions are the ordinary Syrians who struggle to feed their kids or to provide for their children or to help their families. We know that those who are in power and influential people, they do have their means and they have the wealth and to obtain whatever they need. So sanction will not impact them, but it impacts the ordinary Syrians, including the vulnerable communities and women, a lot of women and young girls also. So it's very important to end the suffering in Syria, to allow Syrians to breathe and to work to end the suffering, to improve the humanitarian and living conditions for all Syrians, to rebuild what was destroyed. Again, we cannot do that while we are under sanctions. 2 days ago, a few days ago, Brussels meeting was held. Many of your countries, and we appreciate that, made pledges for contributions to help the Syrian people inside Syria and to facilitate the safe and voluntary and dignified return for IDPs and refugees. We are looking forward for these pledges to be fulfilled, for this funding to be allocated for Syria, for UN partners, for the civil society, to rebuild the country and to make Syria again a place where people can enjoy life, find hope, find opportunities, and restore the normal position for Syria on the international level. I will stop here. Thank you so much. I'm honored. I'm glad. I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador Qusay Dhahak. This is truly a historical moment that we're marking here. I want to thank Sulafa also for being here, a diplomat from the mission with us, for the women who keep the fight up. We are over time, but I do want to also thank our executive director, Alma Salem, who's been sitting here with us and running behind everything to make things happen and work. I want to thank also Shadia Martini, who's come here to be with the delegation and do all of the meetings with us and keep the messages alive for Syrian women. Thank you for being here. I'm going to close with 1 minute each from our speakers to give us a final recommendation before we close the session. Sana, please go ahead.
It's really refreshing to hear everything that everyone mentioned, and thank you all for the solidarity. I think that my main message is just to be for all of us to be grounded again in the hard-earned victory that we achieved, the toppling of the Assad regime. We Syrians people earned with our blood and sacrifice, and I really hope, and I know that the next phase is very challenging and difficult, but I hope that the values of the Syrian revolution of 2011 and the blood of everyone who sacrificed will guide us all through it. So thank you for your partnership.
Thank you.
He represents me. Thank you all for everything, for your support.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I want to just like to mention that it's like the fall of the regime happened because of the sacrifices of Syrian people and Syrian women. And we will challenge whoever will come to the power in Syria, including the current government, Al-Sharia, and the next ones as well. So this is like our job, but to be able to do this job, we need you. Let's agree today that we need to lift the all sanctions, including the UN sanctions, please. This is very important. And also to host you, like next time in Damascus, we wanted to have you all in Damascus.
Yeah.
And just like you mentioned also our conference in Damascus, it was happened because of the contribution and generosity of so many members of the movement. And this is like, but we can't handle this for the future. So to be able to do so, we need to use our funding to have like you in Damascus. So please help us. So thanks.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here, for having supported us for the last 14 years and beyond. And we look forward to seeing you at another event. And the session is closed now. Thank you.